All right, my friends, this is the battle of the 15-inch ported subwoofers that we measured and reviewed. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. All right, my friends, I am Gene Della Sala, and we are here once again with James Larson. How you doing, James?
I'm good.
Well, James, you came up with this cool idea. You've done a lot of the subwoofer reviews for Audioholics for many years. You've done a bunch of 15-inch subwoofers. Why not do a roundup of all the 15-inch ported subwoofers that we've reviewed over the last couple of years or so? And you put together a PowerPoint here, and we're going to go over each of the models, talk about all their associated strengths and weaknesses, if there are any weaknesses when you get to this level, right?
Sure, yeah.
And the features and all that stuff. So I'm going to share this slide presentation, and then you can kind of walk us through it.
Okay.
And here are the subwoofers that we basically have measured, we've listened to, we have experience with, all in the same category of 15 inches ported. Am I correct?
Yeah, these are 50, basically a roundup of ported 15-inch subwoofers. Well, there's that THX sub that has passive radiators. Passive radiators are pretty much like ports.
Yeah.
Same thing, really. Same principle. And yeah, so like all these except for one are still available. They're all like you know, competing for the same in the same class. So like let's just see how they compare against each other. And I should say I don't really want to pick the which one's the best or which one's the worst. We're not this is not what we're doing. We're just kind of comparing them. And I think they all are really good, and they all have their little niche that might suit, you know, your situation better than another, you know. So
yeah.
That anyways, so to go over the list, starting at the top, we have the Monolith M-15v2, which is their 15-inch ported sub from their THX series. We actually only reviewed the version 1 when it came out. Was called the Monolith 15-inch THX Ultra, but the changes from that version 1 to version 2 are just mostly cosmetic, and so that review is still largely valid. It's all the same. It's the same sub, you know, underneath the hood. So like, I think all it is like around the corners, around the edges of that, and I made a few minor changes. So it's the same thing. Anyway,
and I'll put links in the description to all these reviews, as well as affiliate links. If you guys want to purchase any of these subs, we appreciate using our channel partners on your purchases here.
Yeah, it's a good, you know, bottom line about the, you know, Monolith 15 is it's a good sub, and it's one of the lesser expensive subs. It's still expensive at $1,500, and that includes shipping, but it's still, you know, very well built, very high performing sub, 1000-watt amp. It's a big one. Going onto the sides, it's a big one. It's like 130 pounds almost. I remember it. It was not. And one of the problems with it is the feet are kind of small, so you had to be very careful when you lifted it because there was hardly enough clearance for your fingers. You really don't want to set this thing down on your fingers, you know. Monolith, like all Monolith products, 5-year warranty on all components, and all these except for one sub merits a Baseaholics Extreme Room rating.
That's loud.
Yeah, no, they're all really, but they're big, you know, big expensive ported 15. So yeah, they're all gonna be high performance. Moving on to there's the SVS PB16-Ultra.
So this is a 16-inch driver.
So I'm lumping this in with the 15s because it's really a 15. I mean, when you measure it frame to frame, it was like 15.5 inches.
Oh, okay. So if you do half roll, it's really like a 15.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is it's a 15. Right, it's a little bit of a stretch, I feel, to call this a 16, but like, you know, it is what it is, and I'm kind of grouping it in this like 15-inch roundup. Anyways, it's by far the most expensive sub at almost $3,000, so it's $2,900. Very, very powerful 1600-watt amp. It needs it. It's a very, very high excursion driver. It's not terribly sensitive drivers, but it can, with that 8-inch voice coil, it can handle tons of current. So yeah, give it a lot of power, and it can produce a lot of output. It's by far the biggest sub. And under size, I have it listed under Kaiju, right? It's huge. I learned after this sub, I made it a point. I'm never gonna tackle a sub this big again.
Well, we're gonna get you the Goliath from Legacy Audio, so just wait.
Yeah, give me some movers too. Also, yeah, it's 175 pounds about. Just a beast, just huge. Just oh, this is so painful. I remember I'm having like flashbacks right now. Just it's so bad. But
well, I remember the next sub, the Paradigm Defiance X15, because I flew out to Lawrence to do some videos for Martin Logan, and they just were doing the unveiling of the Paradigm subs. That 15 is gigantic, like you put in there. It is a big box, and it's unusual for like loudspeaker companies to make giant subs, especially back when this came out. But now they're like all jumping on the big sub bandwagon.
It seems to be a little bit more common, yeah. And that's not as big. It's a big sub. It's a cube. So all the dimensions, instead of being like a lot of these subs go for depth in exchange for height and width, right?
Yeah.
But the X15 is like just a straight up cube. So it might seem a little bit bigger just for that fact, but actually the dimensions probably aren't that big, right? It's probably pretty average for this group, but yeah, it's a big one. But you know what? It's not too bad to deal with. It's the lightest one of this group at 92 pounds. I remember that one too, and like, it was not bad at all to deal with for me, right? That's a lot of weight. For most people, 92 pounds for a speaker is a lot, but it was kind of nice for me. It was a nice like reprieve. And it was 3-year warranty. It's an extreme, it's an extreme Bassaholics rating like most of these others. But moving on, there's the Klipsch RP-1600SW, which we reviewed pretty recently, within the past few months, or maybe it was late last year.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's $1,800. It's a bit expensive. Oh man, it's just so much. It's a really good sub from Klipsch. Unexpectedly good from Klipsch, right? Klipsch's subs in the past have been decent for the price, but mostly budget subs. This one is darn. I mean, it was. Well, we'll get into it.
This is another one that's supposed to be a 16-inch driver.
Yeah, it's not. it's closer to the 15. I think when SVS declared this PB16 to be like a 16, some other companies went and said, "Yeah, we have 16s too," but really, they're 15s. 800 watt amp on that one. It's a big one. It is a big one. 110 pounds, 5-year warranty, extreme Bassaholics room rating.
Yeah.
Then the one we reviewed most recently was the Definitive Technology Descend DN15, $1,800, not inexpensive. 500 watt amp, which gives us the lowest amp rating that we have from these subs. It's actually the smallest sub here, so it's a big one. By most people's standards, it'd be pretty darn big, but by these standards, it's small. A little bit.
We probably should have put the dimensions, but if you want to see the dimensions on any of these subs, we have individual reviews of each of them.
Yeah, the specs in our individual reviews go into way more depth in here. Of course, it's not light one at 115 pounds. Actually, I just sent this away to our contest winner yesterday.
Oh yeah, for the Audioholics 25th concert, 25th contest.
Yeah, I had this sub for a while, and we gave it away for our 25th anniversary contest. Yeah, so 5-year warranty on the woofer, 3 years electronics, and this is the only one that doesn't get the Bassaholics extreme room rating. It almost, but doesn't really do it. It's a large room. It's a good performer though. It is a good performer.
Yeah, I remember you saying you liked how it sounded with music and stuff too, because I just read the review a week ago.
Yeah, it's a good sub. Moving on to the Shoe Research VTF-15h Mark II. This is just recently discontinued. They're coming out with a VTF-TN1. Which
you have.
I have it. It's not quite available yet, but we're going to be doing a review of it. It's in my basement right now. 1600. They have a lot in common, but when I made this slideshow, that was still available, and it's still a great sub. So we have a lot of data for it. Actually, we never reviewed it, but I have it and measured it many times.
Well, we did have another reviewer before you that did the measurements on it on the Mark 1. Yeah,
there was actually a serious difference between the Mark 1 and the Mark 2.
Yeah, it got better because I remember seeing Dr. Shu actually post his CEA numbers on his website. So
yeah, it was a big jump in performance. Actually, it's a big sub, like 110 pounds, 7 years warranty on the woofer, 2 years in electronics, but you could buy an extended warranty. That all this information doesn't really matter too much anymore because it's not available anymore. But it was by far the cheapest sub at $1,250, but they charged shipping. Shipping was not included, and the shipping on such a big sub, on a well-packed sub, was like $200 to $250 or something like. So it made it basically a $1,500 sub. Moving on to the monoprice Monolith 13-inch. Well, a lot of people might think that the 15-inch Monolith THX sub will be more powerful and higher performance than the 13, but that's not the case. Actually, the 13 doesn't have a big advantage. It's more expensive. It's a much more powerful amplifier. It's a huge sub. This is a big sub, 150 pounds. I actually wouldn't. They misquoted me the weight when I agreed to review this. I said, well, I asked them. They asked me, "Do you want to review this sub?" And I said, "Sure." How much does it weigh though? You know, because I have my limits after that SVS sub, right? And they said, "Oh, it's like 90 pounds," but it was a misquote, right?
Oh,
this thing arrives on my doorstep.
Yeah, a misquote.
Yeah, misquote. I was like 150 pounds. Oh no, right? But it's a good sub. I managed to deal with it. It's a great sub.
You know, I told Monoprice to lie about the weight so you'd review it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got me. I mean, I reviewed it, but it wasn't too bad to deal with. I accidentally damaged it just a little bit though, but it wasn't catastrophic. It's some minor cosmetic damage.
No, that was a good review.
Yeah, it's a good sub for sure. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, this spaghetti mess of curves is the burst test output numbers, right? Now, I wouldn't try to make too much sense out of this at just a glance, but going into what we say about the individual subs, we'll have a graph that kind of gives you a better look at each sub's performance in these burst test numbers individually. But this is kind of how they rank against each other in terms of total output. So, but you can pause it and kind of like try to trace each graph for whichever sub you want. I guess later, but we can go on to the next slide, I suppose.
Yep.
So to get in and a little bit more detail, the Monolith M-15v2, like we said, we reviewed the Mark I, which is largely the same except for some cosmetic subs. Really good sub. It has the most 12 hertz output actually of all of the subs that we tested. But I will add that doesn't make a lot of sense for subs to expect performance of ported subs underneath the tuning frequency. Yeah, it has the most output, but the output isn't going to be great. It's just not. Ported subs shouldn't be run. Don't expect anything of ported subs below the port tuning frequency.
It's going to be chuffy. It's going to be noisy. Yeah, that's where a large sealed sub with room gain and a high excursion driver and a big cabinet, that's where you really get the infrasonic bass as opposed to the ports. This
one does keep port chuffing pretty that kind of behavior pretty well managed with respect to most ported subs, but still it just doesn't make sense to expect a lot of ported subs below the tuning frequency. And the tuning frequency of this is it's variable tuned, and it can be tuned to I think 16 hertz, 17 hertz in that area, maybe 18, around that ballpark. I don't exactly remember what. But excellent distortion characteristics, very good. It has to have that though to merit THX certification.
Yeah.
It's a big sub, even though it's one of the least expensive subs. It's one of the best, the biggest, heaviest, and best built. The build quality on this is really, really good. As balanced inputs and outputs, variable tuning, like we said, grid group delay. But yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yep. So going from these graphs, it might be a little cryptic for people. I mean, I guess you can kind of pause it, or if you want to know better explanations about the graphs that we're going to post about these subs. Go to the reviews because we have reviews on all these. But going from the upper left-hand corner graph, which is it's a graph of the group delay, and for a ported sub, the group delay on this is excellent, really good, way above average.
Yeah,
it's excellent. Right? So in terms of time domain characteristics, this is a really, really, really good ported sub. Really like sealed. A lot of sealed subs.
And look at how linear the frequency response shaping is on it too.
Oh yeah, it's flat as a pancake from 25 hertz to 200 hertz. A lot of sealed subs don't have that good of a group delay, and I'm dead serious.
I know that's one of the best I've seen. To be honest with you, for $1,500, that's crazy.
Insanely good, yeah. I'll go back just one point I want to make about this is the total harmonic distortion. What I've kind of seen from THX Ultra certified subs is they try to keep total distortion below 5% at 25 hertz and higher. So that's one thing we kind of learned about because THX, they don't really share much information about their subs, right? Yeah. I mean they don't, not their subs, but their certification requirements, right? Yeah. Their specs, right? But that's something we kind of discerned. They don't want distortion higher than 5% above 25 hertz, and this is in all the THX subs we've seen. So That's kind of cool. And on the lower right hand, you can kind of see how the sub fares with respect to other subs. The average, that blue curve on the lower right hand curve is, graph is the average, and the red line is the monolith sub. So it's like it's average, except until you get to 12 hertz, which it's actually above average. But yeah, this is it's average, give or take 1 dB or so. But yeah, going on to the SVS PB16, it's by far the most expensive sub, but it has the most deep bass. Upper bass, it actually is okayish, but it doesn't really have parity. Its upper bass output or performance isn't really on the same footing as I find as like from 16 to 40 hertz is like actually better than 50 hertz and above, and that's
probably
weird.
because of the inductance of the driver, right?
I don't know what I think it might be just a sheer weight.
Yeah,
the weight just makes it like hertz sensitivity in the mid bass. It still is pretty good, but I remember when I reviewed this or when I was like listening to it and I was driving it hard, it pulled in so much current it would dim my lights. So yeah, a good control. The distortion is really good, as you'll see. Well, like you said, by far the largest and heaviest, but the build quality is by far the best. This thing is built like a tank, and it's so heavy, and it's just like it's a brick, man. It's a boulder. It has balanced inputs and outputs, which is really good, especially for a higher end home theater. It has SVS's customer support, which is the best.
Second to none. Yeah.
That's the
other thing that you forgot to mention is it has a very good user app. It has PEQ function. You could do a lot of things with the app. Some of the subs on this list, the cheaper ones like the Monoprice or even the HSU or SU Research, don't have DSP control. They don't have an app. So there's a couple here. This one being one of them, the Paradigm being another, which has a room correction system. So there's some advantages to spending a little bit more on a subwoofer. It's not just about brand appeal or cosmetic or the look of it, but you're getting some extra features that some of these less expensive subs don't have.
Yeah, with the app control, you have really fine control over like a whole lot of like the performance characteristics of the sub. So it's a big advantage. But for me personally, I think I just set it and kind of like once I have it calibrated, I don't fool around with it. So the app is kind of useful, but it's not a huge draw for me. Most of the stuff is that I control that you want to use the calibrate and control stuff should be done through the AVR. But the app
really depends on the AVR you have though, because if you have like an Anthem or if you have an Anthem product, you don't have PEQ function. You just have their room correction and you have to rely on it doing its thing, which it normally does really well. But if you want to get rid of a peak that the room correction system didn't do, since there's no PEQ in that receiver, you got it here with the SVS. It has multiple band PEQ filters.
Yeah, you got it on board, so you don't have to buy like a separate EQ system, like say
mini DSP or anything like that.
You don't need that. That's a big advantage, or it can be. Yeah, but going on to the performance graphs on the upper left-hand corner, there's the group delay. I know you're a little critical of the.
Yeah, that doesn't look the greatest, to be honest with you.
It's fine. Look, where it matters, it's really good, actually.
Above 30 hertz, yes, I agree with you.
Above 30 hertz, it's quite good. Below 30 hertz, it goes pretty high, but that's really deep bass. There's no musical content in that range unless you're listening to like certain pipe organ recordings, and we wouldn't even notice in those type of recordings. So I think this group delay is just fine. I think it's pretty good. Going on to the right of that, the upper right graph is the frequency response. It's pretty good, pretty flat. A little bit of a boost around like 20 hertz, but it's fine. It's a very linear sub. And going down to the lower left, you see the total harmonic distortion graph, and that's like textbook. It's textbook. It's so good. Down to 16 hertz, it's just it doesn't really get that much better than that. It has excellent distortion characteristics. And to the right of that, the lower right hand, is the burst average versus the PB16's like burst, like the maximum burst output. As you can see, it does fall short in the mid bass a little bit versus the average, but in deep bass, it's way above average, by far the most. Like we're talking like 4 dB above average, and that's
which is twice as loud at very low frequencies like that.
Yeah,
that's perceived as twice as loud.
It's a major. It's the deep bass king amongst these subs, but and it's not even close. So like, yeah, really good. Going on to the Paradigm Defiance X15, or I think we reviewed this a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has by far the most mid-bass output. It's the only sub to hit 120 dB and burst test from 50 to 80 hertz. So this has the most punch for like music. If you're looking for a sub for music and you want a lot of punch, this is it. Like the SVS is an app control, so you can like fine tune a lot of the performance characteristics. Also, I think
it's got arc room correction. Yep.
So it's the only sub to have room correction, a room correction routine, and that. Personally, I didn't have a whole lot of. I tried it a few times. I never had a lot of success with ARC, but I know you have. I know Matt Hose has. So like, right? It does have EQ, I believe. So it's pretty good. You know, you can control a lot, but you really need the app because the controls on the back of the sub are very sparse. They're like the most only the most mandatory controls otherwise. So you need the app really to dig into this. Whereas the SVS, you don't need the app. You can have a lot of fine tune control anyway. As like the SVS, balanced inputs and speaker level inputs. So this actually has speaker level inputs. So if you're like an kind of like a older system you want to integrate the sub into, you can just run speaker cable to it. Like we said, it's large. I don't think it's bad looking. It embraces its cube shape. It's a hard cube, right?
Yeah.
And group delay is actually really good. But you can go to the next slide. You can see the group delay for. That's really good, especially in upper bass. It does touch one cycle at like 20 hertz. Its tuning frequency is around 20 hertz, but above 30 hertz, it's below 20 milliseconds, and that's kind of like that's what we're really looking for, right? That's like kind of the worst case scenario. And as far as audibility goes, because the audibility of the group delay in this region it's not really well understood. Nobody knows exact figures what we can sense and they can't sense. So we kind of like the worst case scenario is often quoted to be 20 milliseconds, and this has it above 30 hertz. Going on to the right of that, the upper right graph is the frequency responses, and just leave this in music mode. In music mode, it has basically a flat response from 20 hertz to 200 hertz, just flat, right? That's not too hard to do when you have DSP in there. So, but yeah, really good. The harmonic distortion, this does pop a bit. If you drive it hard, you'll get some distortion centered around like 25 hertz, and like, yeah, so like, if it's still pretty good, you know, at like nominal drive levels, it's low distortion. But if you drive it hard, it'll hit almost 40% at like around 25 hertz. So there's that, you know. It's definitely
not as well behaved as some of the other subs that we were looking at.
Yeah,
when driven hard.
When driven hard, it doesn't have a really high X-Max driver like say the SVS. SVS is like crazy high, like, you know, X-Max, right? Or linear excursion. This doesn't have that. It's pretty good, but it's not super high excursion. But look at the burst average, the burst test average versus the Defiance burst test the maximum output.
Oh yeah, above 40 hertz, it slays, man.
Oh yeah, it's way above. But you know, by far the most upper bass output in this or mid bass output, I should say. It doesn't quite keep up with the average below 40 hertz. At 40 hertz is about the same. But yeah, this sub it really punches hard, and it's not quite on the level of some of these others in deep bass, but it still does really good at deep bass actually. So especially
you get a lot of slam with this sub for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's weird because a sub, most large companies like say Paradigm or Klipsch before recently, they didn't really make big subs tuned to like 20 hertz or they weren't aiming for deep bass, but this one did, and it was one of the first to do so from like a major loudspeaker company. And so
yeah, because this is before the Klipsch one came out.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
like a couple of years before. I think maybe 2 or 3 years
at least. Yeah.
Speaking of the Klipsch, here we got the SW, the 1600 SW we recently reviewed. Really good output, really good performance across the board. There's just nothing really lacking with this the subwoofer. Well, I will say, while the burst test measurements don't really reflect it, I mean, I think the port tuning was a little bit below where it should have been, because if you drive it hard at like 20 hertz, man, that chuffing, it was very audible, right? So like, drive it hard, it might chuff a little bit, you know. Maybe they should have put the port on the back or something, but like other than that, it's excellent, really good. There's just nothing to complain. It's actually really exceeded my expectations, because of the other Klipsch subs we've had experience with were fine for their price, right? But they weren't overachievers. This is a really good sub. This is a really good sub. But you can go on.
You know, I got to see it in person. It is pretty freaking big. I'm not gonna lie, it's a big ass sub, but it does look cool with the copper colored driver like that. And yeah, I'm surprised it's not a bigger seller than what we expected, because we did the review and I think it did well. But I thought, like, when it went on, because this thing goes on sale, like it's $1,800 retail now, but we've seen it on sale for like $1,200 or something. Like it dropped during the holidays. So you can get it. You could get this at discount sometimes.
Well, it's such a big sub that it's not just, not just anyone can buy it, right, and put it in their house. They wouldn't have room for it. It's big. I think it's actually bigger than that picture makes it look.
It's freaking huge, yeah.
And it's going on to the performance measurements. Group delay is excellent. That's really good. Like, doesn't even go over 20 milliseconds until like 25 hertz, right? Really good, right? And like below 20 hertz, yeah, it shoots up to 1.5 cycles, but that's below 20 hertz. That's below the port tuning. There's not even a lot of output around that in that range. I think a filter is causing that. I don't think it's the ports though, because if you look to the right of that graph, right, see where the roll off occurs, right? Mm-hmm. That's a filter. That's a sharp filter. So I think the filter is actually what's causing that group delay spike, not really the ports. Anyways, but look at the frequency response. Look how flat that is. This is an extremely linear sub. Extremely linear. Just ruler flat, and the harmonic distortion is excellent. It's like from 20 hertz and above, right?
Just really low, yeah. It's like under 20%, right?
Well, 10%.
10%, yeah.
Basically hovering on 10% below. So this is a really well controlled, really just well, conceived sub, well engineered. As far as the burst test output versus the average, it's at average or above average. It's
on really well. It's like the best, and almost one of the best in the group.
It really is. Yeah, it's really good. It's a good sub. Yeah, I'll say though, it does chuff a bit, and some of these, like, it's not really reflected in distortion measurements, but yeah. But other than that, really, really good. I really like the sub. Moving on to the DefTech, or we always shorten definitive technology to DefTech because
they don't like that, by the way. So call it, if you ever have a rep on, always say definitive.
You know what? There's so many syllables. Definitive technology, right? This doesn't really roll off the tongue now, does it? Right?
Yep.
We reviewed this. I think we posted this review like a couple months ago. So this is the most recent reviewed sub.
It's very recent, yeah.
Really clean bass, very high fidelity sub. It's a big sub, but like we said, the smallest of this bunch. I think if you're looking for a sub that can disappear, that's just, if you have to have a big sub, but don't want one that's just sticks out way in the room. This, with that fabric kind of like almost finish, right, like wrap, it really makes it disappear, or it helps. Nothing this big could disappear in your living room.
No, but I've seen it in person. I've seen a 4-sub setup at Audio Device Live with it, and it wasn't like an eyesore, especially if they're corner loaded.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I think it's the best looking sub, honestly. Build quality is very good, but it is by significantly the lowest output sub in this group. So like it's about 3 dB shy of most of these other subs, and you can see that in the review. It still gets pretty loud because we're talking about very, very like high performance subs, and this is a high performance sub, but it's not quite on the level of these others. And you can see that in the next on the next page. Group delay is really good, right? It has passive radiators. By the way, we should say this is not ported, but same principle though. Very, very good.
1 active, 2 passive, right?
Yeah, 2 passive drivers, a front firing active driver and 2 side firing passives. Group delay is above average for sure. Excellent. Almost ruler flat response to the right of that. The frequency response is very linear, all the way down to 20 hertz. The harmonic distortion is very good. Like basically below 10%, or at or below 10% from like, I want to say 24, 23 hertz and above, right? Mm-hmm. You can get all these subs if you drive them at low enough frequencies. If you run them hard enough, they'll run into the high distortion. But that's true for any subwoofer anywhere. But going to the burst test average versus the Sun DN15, you can see this is like about 3 dB lower than the average. So like, if you want the most bang for your buck in terms of raw SPL, this isn't really it. If you want a sub that doesn't misbehave, that can't make a bad noise, and it's always very high fidelity, this is a very good sub for that. It never misbehaves, but it just doesn't offer the most output in this lot. So I guess we can go to the next slide. Okay, this very recently discontinued in favor of the VTF-15h, which isn't quite out yet. It has a variable tuning, 16-inch, 16 hertz port tuning. So this is actually tuned. It can be tuned to lower than most of these subs. Most of these subs are around 20 hertz. This thing it can be legitimately tuned down to 16 hertz if you like unseal one port. It has a real satin finish. That finish was the rose nut. Really nice, really nice finish also. Balanced inputs and speaker level inputs, so you have a lot of input, and along with, of course, line level inputs. It was the least expensive when it was out, being replaced by the TN1, which is actually less expensive.
Yeah, it's like $100 less, and they're claiming,
shipping would be much less. But shipping, it looks like it's going to be
less,
around $100. So all in, you're looking at like $1,300, and
it's a smaller footprint. The TN1, it's a deeper cabinet, but it's taller, but it's not as wide, right?
Yeah, it has a much smaller footprint, so it exchanges height for depth. Basically, it takes this sub and takes away the depth, but adds in height, to keep on the same level of performance. But yeah, and there's no DSP on this, of course. I think this is the only sub here that uses an analog amp, but very, very good. Actually, the lack of DSP helps its group delay because the filter is like you can't screw around with the filters too much, right? And so the group delay is actually really good. Goes from above 30 hertz. You're talking about under 20 milliseconds of group delay. So very sharp sub, very, very good sound quality. Excellent frequency response, especially considering there is no DSP here, right? That's
pretty amazing to have it that linear without DSP.
Yeah, basically really flat from below 20 to about 200 hertz. Really good. I should say some of these subs have variable tuning, and for all this, I'm comparing them at their lowest tuning frequency, because if you're going to get a big sub, you want the deepest bass, basically, right? Why have it at a higher tuning frequency? Very good harmonic distortion, but it's not quite as protected by DSP from distortion in low frequencies. So it can, if you crank it hard below 20 hertz, it will, it'll produce some distortion, but it's actually really, really well behaved. Look at the maximum harmonic distortion above, say, 25 hertz, right? It can't go above 10%. Really low, especially in upper bass. Above 50 hertz, right? Nothing, basically 2% and below.
It's just the ultras, it's just the subsonics where it could misbehave a little bit.
Yeah, it'll behave if you drive it hard. As with any of the subs, drive it hard enough at low frequencies and it's going to produce distortion.
So let me ask you this now. I know you don't have all the data yet on the TN1, but the TN1 still doesn't have DSP, right? So it still has an analog amp, doesn't have DSP.
No DSP.
So the behavior we're seeing with the distortion profile, the group delay profile, the TN1 should be pretty similar. It might be a little bit better, but it's not going to be night and day.
I wouldn't expect it to. Well, the ports are going to make a difference. And I don't know how much, because the ports are completely reconfigured, right? And
it's a bigger port diameter, right?
Yeah, so we'll see.
That's going to be interesting, actually, yeah.
Yes, it'll be cool to compare it for sure. So I don't want to say anything. I know that the driver is similar, amp is similar, the internal volume is similar, but the big change is the ports. But that makes a difference. It really does. So, but if you compare the burst averages versus the VTF-15H Mark II, it's about the same. It's give or take a dB or two. It's average for this group, and that's pretty good considering it's the least expensive.
Look, Shu is always given good value, and the fact that he uses the linear amp still, that's a positive in some aspects, because linear amps tend to last longer than a lot of the SNPS plate amps. So if he's got a design that's time tested, I can understand why he stays with it. It's also cheaper to not throw a DSP on it and get the price down, so you get the higher performance sub in that price class.
Yeah, you don't. When you have like fundamentally good performance, what does DSP really do for you? It has some advantages if you want to like EQ your sub, but I don't think it's really needed to have a great sub. But okay, going on to the mono price, like we said, this is the 13-inch. I don't know why did I put this in the sub group, because these are 15s and this is a 13. I think it's just because in the same ballpark of performance.
It's a monster,
and price.
13.
Yeah, it's a monster. Yeah, well, like this, unlike the others, isn't really a 15-inch sub. It's a 13, but it's same price point, basically same size, same performance, maybe a bit better than average. It's like, yeah, really good performance across the board, really heavy at 150 pounds, a true 16 hertz tuning, and most deep bass output, second only to the PB16. Really good distortion and time. Well, we'll see that. It also has balanced inputs, which is really good, and really, really robust build quality. Like built like a truck, man. This thing is a tank.
Yep.
Like, excellent group delay. Look at that. It's crazy good.
That is really good. Yeah.
Excellent. There's a sharp spike at like maybe 200 hertz. That's probably a pipe resonance from the port, but like that, who cares?
Yeah, that's bass managed out anyway.
Yeah, you're not going to hear that, but below that and crazy good. Like just good. I don't know what else to say, right? Ruler flat frequency response going to the right of that, the top right. If you
so there's DSP in there because of the THX, right?
Yeah, you don't need DSP to hit like THX performance, but it helps for sure. It helps, and this has it, right? Yeah, really good frequency response. Harmonic distortion is also very good. It's not quite, I don't know. I mean, this is ultra certified, but this has more distortion than 5% at 25 hertz. I don't know why that is, but I think that's.
Did you have it in THX mode when you did that test?
Oh, you're right. I'm dumb. You're right.
Yeah.
Good catch, Gene. Yeah, this was in.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, so the THX, that the port tuning on the THX modes, I think from all THX certified subs, this is like around 25 hertz. But I ran this in the lowest tuning frequency, which is like 16, 17 hertz, right? So yeah, this will give you more distortion. Not a whole lot. It's still below 20%. You know, at max, that's max drive level. That's when you turn the volume all the way up on all the.
That's still really low.
That's really good.
So if you could put it in THX mode, you will get the lower distortion, but you'll lose some extension.
Exactly. That's and all THX subs that have variable tuning. That's what happens. Going to the burst averages versus the 13, it's as good or better than the average. So you can see that the THX, I mean the 13-inch is the red line there, and the blue line is the average, and it's a lot more at upper bass and a lot more at lower bass, and I guess 40 to 50 hertz is about average for this group, but that's still big numbers. These are all very loud subs, so yeah, really good sub, and not a lot of money. This overperforms for its price point for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks good, man. Look, I remember when the review came out, it was pretty class leading for its price. The performance that you saw. Yeah.
Excellent. Just be ready for the wait, right? 100. So
which sub is right for you?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, there's no winners or losers in this group. It's just which suits your situation the best. What are you looking for exactly? Deep bass is unquestionably the PB16, although the mono price 13 isn't even that far, right? It does really good in deep bass, but if you're on deep bass above all, SVS PB16-Ultra is the clear winner in this group. But if you're looking at like the entirety of the bass range, right, like from all deep bass, mid bass, right, all the way, from like say 20 hertz to 100 hertz, I think the 13, the Monolith 13 or the Klipsch RP-1600SW kind of gives you the most performance overall when you look at the entirety of or whatever you would ever set up the subwoofer to. If you want to use an 80 hertz crossover, 100, 120, right, whatever, these would do the whole range better. Good performance without taking over the room. Well, that means the most visually innocuous, but it's still really good as the DefTech Descend, Definitive Technology Descend DN15. Yeah, it actually does. It sounds really good, and it's the one that your spouse or whoever will complain about the least, right? If you put it in the living room, whatever, But the best post-purchase support, it's got to be SVS or SHU. If you need help, right, you can call them and they'll help you. Their customer support is really, really, really good.
And then SVS has the Bill of Rights, and you can have a 45-day trial period. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to purchasing the SVS, and that's why it reflects in the price. Yeah,
it's really good. It is an expensive sub, but you get a lot of post-purchase support. And also, but then again, the SHU is the least expensive sub, and you also get a lot of good post-purchase support too. So, best value, I would say, I think the best bang for the buck here, I'm going to have to say that either the SHU Research VTF-15 or the Monolith M-15, because they're both like around $1,500 or less, right? And they're both like, if you look at the performance on average, they were like the average performers in the group, they weren't like less than average in almost any metric, yet they're the lowest price subs of the whole group. So like, I think they're like the best. If you want the most bang for your buck, I would say these are the two to look at.
And don't forget, the shoe research, the TN1 is an alleged improvement over the VTF-15H Mark III, and it's $100 cheaper. And we will be having the review. James, when's that going to be done?
Oh, dude, I don't know. I've got to measure it. It's not easy to measure a big sub like that. So don't hold your breath for it. But
hopefully next month it'll be done. That's what I'm giving you, a 30-day.
We'll see. You know, it's the weather has to comply too.
Yeah,
I'm at the mercy of the weather.
So any of these subs are good choices depending on what your goals are.
Yeah, and like we said before, if you want the most punch for music, the Paradigm for sure. Yeah, alternatives, like I know Audioholics measured. I didn't. I mean, Audioholics reviewed the Rhythmic Audio FE15 HP. I didn't, so I didn't
good
put this.
Subs.
Yeah, I'm sure it's good. I haven't heard it myself. I'm sure it's good, but I didn't include this in our roundup because my measurements wouldn't be like 1-to-1. It wouldn't be like Josh Ritchie reviewed that, and like the way I review things, the way he reviews and measures things, it's not quite the same. It's not exactly the same. So like I didn't want to put them head to head. Like alternative mentions, like, so there's that, but that's it's an old sub, but it's still really, really good. It would fare well in this group of subs if you look at the available performance measurements. There's also Shoe Research has the VTF-V Mark V, which is also a pretty good size 15-inch sub. It would be by far the least expensive. It's like $1,000, and the shipping would be another maybe $100. And it actually would be pretty good among this group, right? It'd be much less expensive than most of these other subs, and it would hang in there as far as performance goes. It's just tuned a bit higher than the VTF-15H or the TN1. So it doesn't quite have the extension, but still, it's a really good down to like 25 hertz, right? It would be a crazy good value in this group. Moving on, there's the Emotiva XS15, which is a 15-inch sub with a rear slot port and a 600-watt amp. I don't know much about this except it's $900, right? Maybe it's really good. I don't know. What's the catch here, right? Because it might be really good.
I don't know, man. I just
there's
no measurements on it. They don't really solicit reviews for that stuff, so it's a mystery at this point. And the same thing with Tone Winner. I don't know the brand well. I don't know the reliability of either of the Emotiva or the Tone Winner products, so I couldn't recommend them without us doing long-term tests.
Yeah, I'm listing them because they're kind of competitors. They're fighting for the same market, but I don't know how good they are. I reached out to Tone Winner, and they seemed like they wanted a review, but that kind of fell through the cracks. I don't know where that's at right now. Hopefully we'll get back in touch with them. But yeah, they seemed like they were open to a review, Tone Winner, but we'll see. Yeah, we should get one though. It looks like it could be good. The Tone Winner, like these are all basically 15-inch ported subs in the same class.
And I'll tell you this much: my experience with the SVS ones that you showed here, the PB3000 and the PB4000. I do think these are better value subs in SVS's line than the 16s. The 16s are so big.
They're huge.
I've seen it. It's like the Perlis and D215S. There's very few theaters I would recommend that sub, but the D212 is far more appropriate, right? Just more manageable box size. The SVS 3000 and 4000 series subs give you a lot of the performance of the 16, just not as much subsonic bass. But definitely the mid bass is somewhat better on the 4000.
Well, the 3000, not the 4000.
Yeah. So getting a 2-pack or a 4-pack of the 3000 or 4000, it's more manageable. That's my sweet spot for SVS.
My sweet spot is the 3000. I was, I said in that review that was my favorite sub that they have, right? Even though it's not, it doesn't have that monster deep bass of the 16 Ultra. It's not so huge. It has really good. Its performance is still really good. It has even more mid bass punch than the 16 Ultra, and it's like half the weight, half the size. Right? It's just really good. It's a really good sub. My favorite. I think it's the best sub. By when you look at everything overall, it's just really good. So I think this should be considered if you're shopping in this segment. The PB3000 is really good. The 4000 also really good.
The
But
problem with the monoprice ones, the 16 is again too freaking huge. It's
oh
ridiculous.
geez, I couldn't review it because it was so big. I could measure it.
Yeah.
I managed to measure it, but I didn't take it in my home. Too big.
It's probably very similar to the 13 with probably 3 or 4 dB more output. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. But the M215, I think they discontinued that. I would not tell anyone to get that sub because it's the size of a refrigerator. It's
you know what? So it's cool. You know what's cool about it? It stuffs a lot of firepower into a small footprint, right? Relative to,
I wouldn't call that a small footprint.
Not a small footprint, but it trades in height, right?
Yeah. It's got to be behind a baffle wall. You can't put that in a room. It looks ridiculous. I've seen it at trade shows, and it's insane.
Yeah, it's a big sub. If you're not too worried, I would say if you're not too worried about the weight or the looks of a sub, I think this is could be really good value because it's basically 2 of the Monolith 15s in one cabinet. It has the same footprint as that, right?
Yeah,
and it's only $2,000.
So it gives you 6 dB increase in output, basically.
Yeah, 6 dB, and it's not like it's only $500 more. I don't think they discontinued this. I think this is still available.
Oh, I thought it was done.
I think I'll have to double check. Well, I mean, anybody who is watching this can check Monolith's site, but I think that was a pretty cool sub. Then there's ELAC has a ported 15 at 1K 500 watt amp, and they have app control. I don't think it would be quite on the level of these others as far as raw performance goes, but I think it's kind of fighting for the same space, right? So I listed it. But yeah, so anyways, those are some alternatives to consider that might have their strengths and weaknesses with respect to what we've already reviewed. So yeah, anyways, that's our little well, not little, big subwoofer, 15-inch subwoofer roundup, that ported subs. We already did one for sealed subs, if you remember, and yeah, so that there you have it. There's some 15-inch subs you can get today that we have very detailed information on.
Well, James, I appreciate you doing the analysis and comparisons here. Like I said, guys, we have reviews of pretty much every one of those subs that we went over. Check out the links on Audioholics. Check out the affiliate links down below if you're planning on purchasing a new sub and you want to get one and you want to support the channel. We appreciate that. Guys, don't forget about our Patreon at patreon.com/Audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics. Don't forget to hit the thumb up and subscribe. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.